Welcome into the garage area. This is our Daytona 500 preview show, and I decided that I was going to try to bust out the Daytona 500 hat. However, I cannot find that hat, so I'm wearing my 2009 Matt Kenseth hat, the year that he ended up winning his first Daytona 500. I'm getting all set for the Daytona 500. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited for it. To kick off our green flag segment here, I wanted to take a look at a list of drivers that we had compiled for different guys that we thought have a pretty good shot to win this race on Sunday, and some other guys that we think that might be dark horses, as well as I also put together on my list some guys that it's kind of surprising that we're not considering them. At least I'm not considering them, and we'll see how our lists stack up. So, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell you who I've got on the sheet for the favorites. I looked at J-Ski to see what the entry list was.
Yeah.
And I looked at, in order of car numbers, how that was listed. So I just went through, and anybody that jumped out to me as being somebody that I thought could win the Daytona 500, I put in one column. Anybody that I thought would be a dark horse would be in another column. And I have a third column of guys that are bigger names that aren't in either list. So, I'm out of curiosity, did you have yours numbered?
I just have numbers for not like any order or anything, just guys I thought are good.
Did you have more guys in your favorites or your dark horses?
All favorites.
Okay, I had more guys for my dark horses.
Yeah, I mean, some of the favorites, whatever. I mean, there's one favorite in there I could probably be considered more dark horses, but I just kind of maybe pick some guys that I know can win restrictor plate races. So.
Well, I went through the list and I'm like, oh yeah, I feel good about him, feel good about him, feel good about him. I'm like, man, I don't know that I'd say he's a favorite, but I could see him running well. And so I ended up with only 7 in my favorites, and I've got like 15 people that are dark horses. So I'll go ahead and start with my favorites, and you can tell me what yours are. I've got Brad Keselowski. I also have a couple other notes along with it. He is a past champion, but he has never won a Daytona 500 before, and he's had 14 starts. Denny Hamlin, he has 3 Daytona 500 wins. I think he's an obvious one. Ryan Blaney won the championship last year, never won in 9 starts. I have Chris Buescher in.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that he's somebody that, I mean, he won at Daytona last year and in the summer race, and he's had a really good season with like you said, restricted plate tracks. What do we call these race tracks? They're not restricted plate tracks.
Drafting tracks, I guess.
But you drafted all tracks.
Yeah.
I don't know what the correct term would be to use for it, but I have Buescher on there. We'll talk more about that. Joey Logano, he has a Daytona 500 win and 2 championships. I put Bubba Wallace in.
So did I.
Because I feel like he was a decent favorite. And Michael McDowell. He just always seems to be a factor. They ran pretty well last year. Who were in your favorite list?
Well, I got Kyle Busch. He nearly won it last year, Talladega win. I think he's a threat. Plus RCR, I think, has their decent plate program, I guess you would say. So I put Chase Elliott because he runs up front all the time at the super speedways.
I knew you'd have Elliott in your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went through team by team and saw like which out of these teams are like the better plate or restrictor plate drivers and stuff. And I feel like out of Hendrick, he's probably the best out of them because Larson doesn't even have a plate win at all yet.
Yeah,
which is surprising. We got Hamlin, Bubba Wallace. I got Blaney and Logano. So our lists are pretty similar. I got Keselowski, Buescher, and I put the 34 of McDowell in there too. So I was torn between him and putting him in there a favorite or a dark horse area because I feel like that's the only place he's ever favored. So I mean it's still to me considered more of a dark horse maybe. But
well, speaking of dark horses, why don't you tell me who you had for your dark horses since my list is extremely long?
Well, I put kind of SHR as a whole. I know the Ford camp as a whole itself. Each manufacturer runs their own race together and stuff. And Ford's, at least as of last year, with their body styles pushed real well. I don't know how much the new body styles have changed. It'll affect that. To me, it looks similar anyways, but I just know SHR's in that Ford camp. They'll be up front with the Fords if they're up front pushing each other, so there's a chance there. But more particularly, which are still Fords, I put Justin Haley. He's in the Ford, plus he's a good restrictor plate driver. And Riley Herbst, who ran up front in his Talladega start last year in the 36 car. So, but he's running with teammates with Justin Haley at Rick Ware. So I thought that was interesting. So that's pretty much how I have my dark horse set.
Okay. I have none of those as dark horses. My dark horses are Ross Chastain.
Yeah. I mean,
Austin Dillon.
yeah.
He has a Daytona 500 win. I wasn't sure whether to put him in the favorites or not because he does commonly run up front at these type of racetracks, but they haven't had the same measure of speed as Kyle Busch has.
Yeah.
I put Kyle Larson in that category. I put Coy LaJoie on it. I just feel like
I was gonna put on there and I forgot.
I just feel like he gets lumped in with this all the time, even though
I did put him in there. I just didn't put his name. I put the 7.
Oh, okay.
I did have LaJoie there, so that was.
I just feel like he's one of those guys that he is always a factor. He's never won anything, but he's always kind of around there. And
Yeah.
I think if you were to really break it down, I would actually probably feel more comfortable with Coy LaJoie at Atlanta than I do Daytona. But I don't know why I feel that way.
I see him more up front in Atlanta, anyways.
But anyways, I have Kyle Busch on there, and that's only because I should have looked it up. I'm not sure. Does he have more than 2 restrictor plate wins?
Yeah, he won the Coke 400 at Daytona, I believe. He's also won the Clash there, and
I know he's won the Clash. I felt like both of his wins were at Talladega, in my brain, and I remember him in 2008 or 9 leading Tony Stewart to the checkered flag at Daytona, but he got wrecked.
yeah, I thought he won one of those also.
It could be.
Maybe I'm thinking about the Clash win that he pulled off. I don't remember now.
I could agree with you that maybe Kyle Busch should be in the favorites rather than a dark horse, but just the lack of Daytona 500 success that he's had is put me in that particular camp of wanting to put him in a dark horse role. I put Chase Elliott there also because he does run well, and I went back and forth whether or not he should be in the favorites group or not. I don't have any problem with him being considered one of the top guys, but just coming off such a bad year last year, and I don't know. I didn't have a good feeling about him, and that doesn't mean that he won't run well or anything remotely close to that. I also had AJ Allmendinger in there as somebody that I thought could potentially run well. I know Colleague's not really been fast, but they have a history of being fast at this type of racetrack, and he has a pretty good history of running up front at these type of races as well. Martin Truex Jr., I had him on there.
I thought about putting him there too, somewhere in there.
William Byron, he just, to me, hasn't proven enough to put him in the favorites.
Yeah.
But I definitely see him being on the verge of contending.
Yeah, his first win was at Daytona, but I feel like a lot of that was helped by because Chase Elliott was already locked into Chase,
Yeah.
so Chase kind of followed him around the last few laps there, so he didn't really have to fight too hard. So,
I also have Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. just won it last year. Ty Gibbs, I think, is somebody that could be fast.
I mean,
I've got half the field.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just didn't want to choose the whole field. I mean, you can have 10 favorites and then put the rest as a dark horse. As far as I'm concerned,
David Reagan,
yeah,
and Jimmy Johnson. I don't know where I'm at with those two guys, but Reagan's had success at Daytona, and he's always was a strong restricted plate racer. And Jimmy Johnson has 2 Daytona 500 wins, even though he's like 100 years old now. But
that's if they can make the race. So.
Yeah, that's true. I think Jimmy will.
Yeah.
I do. I just think that with a Toyota partnership, I think they're going to put some extra special emphasis on him being fast.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact they got him away from Chevrolet in order to be partnered with Toyota. So that I could see them let's at least let Jimmy make the show or put some effort into making that happen. Did you have any other categories besides just favorites and dark horses?
Not as far as who's going to win or something, but I do have the open cars of Kaz Gralla is going to be driving the 36 for front row, David Reagan for Roush, and Alfredo driving that 62 Beard Motorsports.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, McLeod in the 78, he's not, he sold his Charger to Spire, so he's an open car now, and of course, Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
So,
how confident do you feel that those guys are going to have the opportunity to qualify in? Give me your order of who you think is most likely to least likely to qualify in.
Most likely, probably Jimmy, Reagan, Kaz, Alfredo, McLeod.
Yeah, I would agree with that list. Yeah. Did you have anybody else you wanted to talk about?
No.
I have one more category on my sheet, and that is big names that missed both categories. And for me, that was Christopher Bell. Was somebody that I don't really consider him being somebody that I see running well at Daytona. And I don't know why. And I think it goes, like, the mentality goes back to the same thing they talked about in Full Speed, of, like, he's just not somebody you consider being a threat until he is.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't somebody that crossed my mind as, oh, I think he could win this race. Same thing with Alex Bowman. I have not a lot of confidence in him. I know he gets out front and leads a lot of these races, but he just always finds his way in the back by the time it's over with.
Well, one thing about the Daytona 500, he's been sat on the front row like 5-6 straight years. I feel like they set their car up trimmed out for qualifying, and then it just doesn't race well.
No.
And I think Hendrick kind of wants a front row starting spot just for like the prestige of it.
Yeah.
And someone at Hendrick's gonna probably get the short end of the stick for qualifying. So it's curious to see how that plays out this year.
Daniel Suarez was the other guy that Ross Chastain, partly due to his car number, but he was one of the first guys that I thought of when it came to dark horses. But Daniel Suarez isn't somebody I even consider for that. Like, I don't have any faith in him running well. And Austin Cindric, for being a Penske car, typically runs up front at some point during the race and has a Daytona 500 win, and I don't consider him a threat at all.
Yeah.
Would you feel the same about any of those guys?
Yeah.
It's good. All right. At least we're all on the same page that way. Okay. Now that we've gone through the guys and where we think that they're going to perform and who we think will be strong, tell me, who do you think is going to win the Daytona 500?
I'm going Brad Keselowski.
That's what I was going to take. All right. You know, with the way that we're doing our picks this year, first time that we've ever done this with each other, I say that we abide by these rules, and you can agree or disagree, whatever you think. The two exhibition races, it doesn't matter. You can pick whoever you want, as long as it's not the same person. And the points don't count for those races. Other than that, the board is wide open. I know that on Door Bumper Clear, when they do their picks, if you pick the guy, you can't pick him again. I'm fine with you picking the same person, but they can't go back-to-back weeks.
Okay.
So if you're picking Keselowski this week, you can't take him for Atlanta. Because I'm just now explaining this rule. If you want to go back on your pick, that's fine.
Oh, no.
But I would be keeping that pick. Yeah, so you're going to take Brad Keselowski. That kind of throws a little wrench in my plan. I am going to take Denny Hamlin. I think those are pretty two solid picks. I really wish we had them the other way around, because I'd like to see Brad win over Denny. But, I'm good with that. I think that Denny Hamlin has a really good shot to go for 4. And Brad for his first win with RFK.
I almost want to pick Brad at every restrictor plate until he wins one.
Yeah, he's just is solid. Okay, the next thing I have here is a 16 driver playoff. I want to pull up the sheet that we have from last year. Did you already make one as far as I have a list of guys that you think are going to be in the playoffs this year?
I got myself a playoff list here.
Okay, you go ahead and tell me.
Things in it, but
tell me who they are.
Well, I got all of HMS and all of JGR, and all of 2311 too. So I put 12 and 22 of Penske, Blaney and Logano. I got the one of Trackhouse. This is kind of where it gets tricky, because I put both RFK cars in there, Keselowski and Buescher, and that only left me one spot, and I couldn't. I realized I didn't have Kyle Busch in there, so I just I couldn't not put him in there. So that's pretty much what I did. It just, to me, still the powerhouse teams are still going to be the best ones up there. So I'm sure somewhere someone's going to get a lucky win somewhere is going to knock someone out, but if I go by who I really truly believe deserves to be there or whatnot, that's kind of what my picks are.
Yeah, like last year's opening round of 16, you had Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin. This is not in order. Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Martin Truex Jr., Bubba Wallace, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Michael McDowell. Obviously, Kevin Harvick is not going to be in it this year. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Michael McDowell, I don't think those two make it. I think everybody else is in from last year. I mean, Larson for sure, Denny for sure, Reddick for sure, Byron absolutely, Bell I think does, Brad absolutely, Buescher. Dale Jr. talked this week about he doesn't think that Buescher's going to have a good year this year and that he's not.
I could see Keselowski having a better year.
I agree with that. I think that he'll have a better year. I'm on the fence as to whether or not I think Buescher will make the playoffs, but I think that he does get a win somewhere along the line, so that would put him in. But I'm gonna say that Buescher stays, Kyle Busch stays, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Truex, Bubba, Joey. So that leaves 3 open slots, and I feel like Corey LaJoie is gonna get that one of those lucky wins.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that happening. Chase Elliott, I think, is going to be in it. And, man, I think you could see Eric Jones sneak in.
I had him in there before I removed him and put Kyle Busch back in. I put Eric Jones in there, and at the same time I was watching Denny Hamlin's podcast, and he said Kyle Busch because he was doing his now.
I better put Kyle in there.
I couldn't do it. And even in our first episode, I said I could see Eric Jones getting a win or two, and I'm like, because that gives him a win or two, that puts him in. So
yeah,
I was kind of torn there. But
all right, now of those 16 that we just talked about, who is it that you got in your final 4?
It's gonna seem kind of biased, but I had to put someone from JGR Hendrick in there, so I put 2 Hendrick drivers of the 9 and a 5 because in reality since 2020. Other than last year, since Chase was out, he's been in the Final 4.
Okay.
And, of course, since Larson's been to Hendrick, he's always been in the Final 4.
Okay.
So I put them 2 in there. Plus, I put Denny Hamlin. Of course, I think he faded late because one was a mechanical issue.
Right.
And plus, he had shoulder issues, too, and I think that hampered him, too. Now that he's got surgery and coming off a win, I think he's going to probably have a pretty good year from the seems of things. He has some momentum going already.
Yeah.
So I put Hamlin in there, and I put Logano.
Put Logano in there.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I didn't think you would do that just out of pure hatred.
No, yeah, I just I figured it's gonna be one of the Penske drivers. I just the way Blaney kind of got hot right there real quick at the end, and I think maybe I can see Logano having a better year overall and making it. So
yeah, no, I agree with that to an extent, except I don't think that there's going to be 2 Hendrick drivers in it. I think that you're going to... This whole thing that we're doing right now is purely to see how wrong we are when it comes to October. But I've got Joey Logano because it's an even year. He makes it every other year. I've got Denny Hamlin because I think that he's just right there at the edge waiting to jump off. And like you said, there's a lot of good reasons to think that he'll go further. The last 2 years he's done really well, just hasn't quite made it. Odd things have taken him out at the very end to make the Final 4. So I got Denny Hamlin. I got Martin Truex Jr. I think that he's not going to have as consistent a whole year, but I think he's going to have a much better playoffs.
Yeah. It was just curious to see how far he fell off at the final 10 races last year. He just barely made it to the final 8 as it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
And then I think that it's going to be Ross Chastain.
Yeah, for me. It was going to be between Chastain and Logano for my final 4.
Yeah.
It was one of those 2.
I could definitely see that being an option as well, as far as having to make some considerations between the 2 of them. I definitely think that Joey's going to be fast. I don't know why. There's nothing from last year that makes me think that he would be fast. Yeah. But I just think that enough stuff is going to build up. I think he'll definitely get a win to get into the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, as we saw with Blaney, anything can happen. So, from that Final Four, who do you got as a champion?
I don't know. I think I put Hamlin.
Putting Hamlin.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had Chase Elliott in there, and you still picked Hamlin.
I feel like one of those. I don't know. For me, it's almost a 25% chance, and
I am going to say it's Ross Chastain. And that's...
I can see it, too.
It's an odd thing to say, I get it,
Yeah.
and it comes down to one race, and the 2 years that Ross has been there in that one car, he's been really fast. If he gets to Phoenix, I think he's the guy. So if I've got him in the championship 4, I've got to pick him as the champion.
Yeah. I can't argue against that either. It's just way too early to make these
absolutely.
things.
100%. 100%. Only reason we're doing it is to see how wrong we're going to be. We're going to clip this section of this video in October and be like, boy, we were idiots. Okay. You've got 30 seconds. I'm going to set a timer. And I want you to explain to me, how do the NASCAR playoffs work in 30 seconds? Because as they were trying to explain it on the show, what's it called?
Full speed or something?
Yeah, it's full speed.
Yeah.
As they were trying to explain on there, it just seemed like everybody was not on the same page as far as how the playoffs work. Like, you and I know how they work.
Yeah.
But how do you put it into words? Because it is a little bit complex. There's a lot of moving parts that you have to keep track of throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to start the timer. You've got 30 seconds to tell me, how do the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs work? Go.
16 drivers get in by winning or point standings. There's 3 rounds and 1 final race. After each round, 4 drivers are eliminated based on point standings, and if any driver wins in each of those rounds, it automatically guarantees them on to the next round. In the final race of the last 4 drivers, the highest finishing driver wins. The highest finishing driver wins the race in championship, not the race, but the championship.
Wow. That was 30 seconds. That was impressive. That was actually pretty clear for as complex as these different parts are. Yeah, I like that explanation.
There's still a lot of little details in there too that you can pick out too about bonus points and how they add on to through each round and all that stuff too, I guess. But I feel like that's the most simplistic way I could describe it in 30 seconds.
All right, I'm gonna give it a try, and you tell me if what I'm saying makes sense. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, timer starts now. Okay, 16 drivers to make the playoffs. If you have more than 16 winners, then it's directly related to points. If you have less than 16 winners, everybody that won a race in the top 35 in points gets in, and anybody from the final winner to 16th in points is where you determine who gets the cut there into the actual playoffs. You have 3 races, and after the 3rd race, 4 drivers get eliminated at the bottom of the point standings. If you win any of those 3 races, you automatically advance into the next round, and that works all the way up to Phoenix. When you get to Phoenix, the winner of the race, or the highest finishing driver of the 4 remaining drivers, wins the championship. And I went over my time by 8 seconds.
I'd say you got more detail into it than I did.
But that's as clearly as I can explain that, as fast as I can explain it. So I think you win that if we're actually had any way of keeping score. That your explanation was better and shorter. So in NASCAR, that definitely gets you more points. All right. The final topic of our green flag segment. A Daytona 500 is huge. I mean, to win one of those, it's the most celebrated race. It's everything. If you win a Daytona 500, you are in another category as a driver. Like, you'll remember those guys for forever.
Yeah.
And there's guys that have won Daytona 500s that have never won a championship that you still know their name. Ward Burton, 2002, won that Daytona 500. Ryan Newman in 2008 won a Daytona 500. Trevor Bayne, 2011, won a Daytona 500. It's its own category of prestige, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are based on the current championship format, which we both dislike, correct?
Yeah.
Based on the current championship format, would you rather see your driver win a Daytona 500 or win a championship?
Man, I excited I would be to see him win the 500. I still feel like saying your driver is a multi-time champion is just gives a better feeling.
Well,
to
I
it,
can
so.
say that because
Okay.
my favorite driver is a multi-time champion. So yes, I understand. I understand that thought for sure. And Joey does have a Daytona 500 already. So, I mean, I think that for me, it's the Daytona 500 for my particular driver.
Yeah.
If I were a driver, trying to put myself in that position, man, I feel like the championship format has changed over the years so much. I don't like the system that we have in place now. Denny Hamlin has mentioned it multiple times on his podcast that we constantly reference, that these are not the same type of championships that were won. You heard Kevin Harvick say it at Homestead when, I can't remember who won that championship, but he said that, these aren't the same championships that Petty and Earnhardt won.
Yeah.
I think right now that at the very least, they're the same. Winning a Daytona 500 and a championship is the same. And depending on the day, you could talk me into one or the other. But I can tell you this, I get way more excited when I see... Well, I get way more excited Daytona 500 a week. And I don't know if it's just because of the fact that the season's kicking off. I've seen Joey Logano win 2 championships and 1 Daytona 500, and I think I was more excited after... I was most excited after the first championship, I think.
Yeah.
But after that, I felt like the Daytona 500 was the most exciting thing prior to the second championship. That's just how I feel about it. They're real even for me. It's hard to put one over the other.
I mean, last time my favorite driver won a Daytona 500 was 2005 with Jeff Gordon. So.
I'm curious to do this. I want us to, at some point, we can talk about this off camera sometime, but at some point during our shows, I would like us to ask each other a trivia question to see if we know the answer to it. How far back in time can you list Daytona 500 winners? I should ask this question. Is there a consecutive string of Daytona 500s that you can name the winner of?
Probably not.
I can do 2000 to 2015. Dale Jarrett, Michael Waltrip, Ward Burton, Michael Waltrip, Dale Jr., Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Kevin Harvick, Ryan Newman, Matt Kenseth, Jamie McMurray, Trevor Bayne, Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, 2013, Dale Jr., Joey Logano.
No.
And I don't know who won it in 2016. But
was that the Hamlin first one?
I think it could have been. It might have been
side by side.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if that was 16 or 17. And
Yeah.
Kurt Busch has got one in there. That might have been 18 or I don't remember. I can't remember where it was.
I remember every single one of those that you listed off, but I would have never put them in order.
Yeah, that's
other than like I knew Gordon was 05 and Junior had 04.
yeah.
Well, I don't remember the second one.
That's
Yeah.
weird things stick out to me from that. Dale Jarrett, I just remember. I don't remember even watching the race. I just remember that my dad liked Dale Jarrett and him winning the Daytona 500. I remember that. 01, Earnhardt died. Waltrip won. We've seen a ton of commentary on that. 02 was Ward Burton in the Caterpillar Dodge. I mean, that just sticks out.
Yeah.
You can see that. 03, Waltrip again was rain shortened. 04, you can see Junior's red and white car beating Tony Stewart. 05, Jeff Gordon, obviously, for you. And then 06, I remember in 06 saying, I watched Jimmy Johnson take the checkered flag. Chad Knaus was suspended because they were cheating that year. And I remember turning to my dad and saying, if he wins the championship this year, I'm going to quit watching. Well, here we are, way later. He won 7 championships. That was the year he won the first one. And I'm still watching.
Yeah, he won 5 in a row.
Yeah, it was a rough 5 years for me. All right, that'll do it for our green flag segment. On to the white flag segment. And the first thing that I want to point out is how smart we are. Because even though we're idiots, we're very smart when it comes to this particular subject. Because I've noticed that a lot of the Dirty Mo Media podcast, that's Dale Jr.'s podcast world, a lot of the opinions of the drivers, the spotters, and Dale Jr. himself did seem to line up with our takes from the Clash. We think that it needs to be back at Daytona. We think it needs to be pole winners only. And Dale Jr. himself used the exact word that I used when I said it's a good appetizer for the Daytona 500. The Clash and the Daytona 500 go together so well. They need to be at the same racetrack. I'm in favor of it. I saw on that, I don't know if, did you watch the Dale Jr. Reloaded show that they're doing Thursdays? I wasn't super interested in it, but I did watch it. And they put out a poll to find out what they need to do with the Clash. 70% of people said bring it back to Daytona. So I think everybody's on the same page with this except for NASCAR, so make it happen. That's what fans want to see. So, kind of off of that same idea, I'm curious to know what you think about this, and we haven't discussed this at all, so I'm going to get your genuine reaction right now. What do you think about a NASCAR preseason? And the first question is going to be, how exactly would that work? We have the Clash, and I want it to stay tied to Daytona. If you want to get some hype for the season and to go different places, I think that you need to send specific drivers on specific missions and have some sort of TV coverage follow them. And I don't know how you do this promotionally, if you just use NASCAR's YouTube channel or if you do specials on Fox Sports 1 or what it is. But I want to see guys like Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson dirt racing out in California or down in Texas or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
That it's
Kyle Larson's racing right now in Florida. So
well, it's exactly though. But how many people know that outside of people that follow him? And I think that something like that needs to be promoted. It's like we're getting ready to start Stock Car Racing's biggest series to kick off the year with their biggest race. What are these guys up to right now? What are they doing to get things in shape? What does their pre-Daytona 500 season look like? Larson, like you said, is racing. I'm sure Bell's racing.
Chase Elliott's racing a pavement late model, I think just before a couple of days before the 500. So
I saw Haley Deegan was running a micro sprint down in Florida as well. There's drivers doing a bunch of different stuff that I don't think gets enough coverage unless they decide to expose it themselves.
Yeah.
And if NASCAR wants more attention, they don't need to put so much focus on the series, in my opinion, as they do the drivers themselves. Because what did you fall in love with about the sport? You fell in love with the driver. You were following the driver. You're not necessarily following the sport as a whole. That it just kind of came with the whole package. And you were following your specific driver. I was following my specific driver. And I want to know what they're doing when they're not at the racetrack. And at least at NASCAR sanctioned racetracks, I'll put it that way. So if they're dirt racing somewhere, I want to see that. Give me that kind of coverage. And I don't want to have to go find it. I want it to be brought to me just like racing is on a weekly basis. And so that's my idea is if people are going to complain that specific sponsors don't get enough time in the Clash because their driver didn't win a pole, well, take your sponsorship money that you would put towards the Clash and put it on their race car for that week to go run something, to put your name out there and have NASCAR send a camera crew with you to follow you. I don't know what you think about that. I don't know how that works logistically, but I would like to see something along that line. And that's
Christopher Bell can't race nothing else because Joe Gibbs won't let him race dirt. So there is some red tape and stuff that teams don't allow outside activities other than racing itself. So that's I see your idea, but I don't know how.
Well, what if the team's got a cut of that money then? We're going to lease your driver to run this race car. You'll get paid so that you're not out all of your money, or if you were to get injured or something like that. But I don't know. I just feel like I don't have it all ironed out. I don't have the plan perfected yet, but I would like to see something along that line go to kind of promote the sport getting into February here. But I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I don't.
Yeah, I never really thought that hard into it. Not that I think hard at all on anything. But.
Like we talked about just a second ago, you fall in love with the driver when you get into NASCAR. What caused you to get into the sport initially yourself? Do you remember?
It's kind of weird. My mom used to work at Giant Eagle, and their boss on Sundays, they used to have to wear a uniform or a standard dress code or whatever. But on Sundays, they were allowed to wear something NASCAR related. Mm-hmm. So my mom would wear a Jeff Gordon shirt, and because her boss hated Jeff Gordon, and just I don't know, just that kind of what made me a Jeff Gordon fan, and I just had to watch races because there
was some piece of merchandise that you acquired,
pretty
and
much,
you were like, "This is my guy now."
Yeah,
that's fair. I was given a Bill Elliott hat as a kid, and I was a Bill Elliott fan until he moved away from Ford because I was a Ford fan first, and ended up picking it up with Matt Kenseth, and I really don't have an explanation as to why. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know what got me into being a Matt Kenseth fan, but as you can see, it did stick for many years. Still has. Even when he ended up going to Gibbs, I was still a Ford guy, so I wasn't going to follow him over to Toyota and JGR, but I still wanted to see him do well. And being a Joey Logano fan, and you know the history of those two guys, that kind of clashed there for a minute. But anyways, yeah, I think that I just feel like when I was a kid growing up, you saw more NASCAR stuff more places. Like when you went to Walmart, you could still buy hats and T-shirts there, even though that they were on the cheaper side of quality. Like you weren't going to get Chase Authentics or something like that there. You were just going to get some cheap brand. I feel like die casts were way more common just on store shelves.
I do feel like the die casts have picked up a little bit because every time I go to Walmart, I go look back at the die cast section. Feels like it's been fuller. I've been seeing a little wider array because I've been able to pick up a couple of Chase Elliott trucks from there and stuff. But it's still a lot less than what it used to be.
I feel like it's kind of you're starting to see it spring back up a little bit.
Maybe.
I think that the merchandise on the shelf is kind of what draws people's attention a little closer. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a marketing guy. I don't know anything about the business world of NASCAR. But to me, I just feel like I was way more invested when I was seeing hero cards and die casts and just cardboard cutouts of drivers promoting things and things along that line. Jeff Gordon in the grocery store standing next to a case of Pepsi. Like things like that just drew your attention back to the sport a little bit more. And I think that that's what's been missing lately in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to get back to that level now, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen again.
I remember up in the mall, they used to have NASCAR Obsession. The whole store was NASCAR, and now they changed the Sports Obsession. You got to go clear to the back to find anything that's dwindling NASCAR gear. So
yeah, that's been a little bit disappointing, and not most of it's current either. You got a lot. I noticed last time I was there was a lot of old Kyle Busch gear, the 18 car and things like that, and just not a lot of what you were looking for.
I haven't been in here a couple of years, I think so.
Yeah, it's. Have you seen the new light up pit boards yet?
I haven't seen them. I heard about them.
I've heard about them. I haven't physically laid eyes on them yet. I think maybe RFK, their social media team is great. They might have posted a video of it or something. I feel like I've at least seen something related to it, but not necessarily in action. I'm looking forward to seeing those, what that kind of looks like, how it affects pit stops, if it affects pit stops or not. Not entirely sure how that's going to all shake out. All right, on to our checkered flag segment. 4 drivers to watch in the Xfinity Series race. Who you got?
Austin Hill, Justin Allgaier, Sam Mayer, and Cole Custer.
Wow.
It's pretty much the 4 I'm going to watch all year.
Yeah,
anyway,
I was going to say that's...
I feel like,
I don't really have anybody to add in there. Keep your eye on this guy. No, I think that you nailed it there. I think that the junior motorsports cars will be fast. Cole Custer, Ford's got a limited entry in the Xfinity Series. I don't know how that's going to work out for him trying to work with people. Be curious to see how that shakes out. But
Austin Hill, even by himself, though, for some reason, he's fast at these restrictor places.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that dynamic. He had trouble with even teammates working with him last year, so.
He doesn't have Sheldon Creed now because
that's right.
Well, they had their falling out
last year. Did.
So, Jesse Love was his teammate now. So I don't think has much. I think ARCA does run plate type tracks, so I don't know.
They run Daytona, but I don't know about them. So I don't know. That'll be an interesting combination there for sure. Speaking of Xfinity, I don't need you to name the playoff drivers. I don't need you to name the Final Four. Just give me who you believe is going to win the Xfinity Series championship this year.
Justin Allgaier.
Justin Allgaier. And I'm pretty sure that's just wishful thinking on your part. But
I mean, Phoenix is one of his best tracks. I just know I can't see him not making the Final Four.
No, I agree.
And I just know because it's got to be one of these times they put it together.
You would think so.
Because I feel like the biggest threat, Austin Hill, and of course I have Mayer and Custer. I feel like out of those 4, Allgaier is the best at Phoenix. John Hunter Nemechek, he won her last year, right?
Won at Phoenix?
Yeah, or championship?
The championship was Cole Custer.
Cole Custer, oh, that's right. Well, that kind of throws off my theory. So.
Yeah, I can see Cole Custer going back to back, but if I had to take a second pick, I think I'd say Sam Mayer.
Oh, okay.
I think that he's just developed a lot recently, and I think this is going to be a big year for Sam Mayer. Yeah, I think you'll see the one car in victory lane a lot in the Xfinity Series. Give me 3 drivers to watch in the Truck Series race.
I really just kind of picked 3 names that looked familiar. I'm curious to see how Ty Dillon does.
Yeah,
because although his Cup career is abysmal.
Yeah, hopefully over.
Yeah, I think he could have some success, especially at a restrictor plate with Rackley, because that's the only when Denebetto got with him was at like Talladega. So
yeah,
I think he's got enough experience; he could run well at Talladega. And I put Ben Rhodes and Ty Majeski because I know they're veterans of the Truck Series. And
yeah, I feel like the truck race is going to be such a disaster that it's just a matter of what cars or what trucks are running at the end of the thing. So I feel like Ben Rhodes is somebody that I would say could navigate that a little bit better than most. Matt Crafton, as much confidence as I have in him in the Truck Series, every plate track seems like he gets into something.
Yeah.
So I don't want to bring him into it. I really don't even know who my other 2 would be. I excuse me. I have most confidence in Ben Rhodes to win that race and to be one of the guys that you pay attention to.
A lot of things change in the Truck Series. It's hard to decipher who's in and out and stuff until a few races in.
Who is your Truck Series champion in 2024?
I got Corey Heim.
Corey Heim, be Heim time. Yeah, I think that he probably should have won it last year.
Yeah.
Boy, that's hard.
Savard.
Yeah, you definitely got Savard. I was going back and forth between him and Ben Rhodes.
Yeah.
But I really think that Heim just had the best truck last year, and I think he will again this year. I don't see anybody really stepping up to take away the competition that Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar had put forth last year. So I do agree that I think that Corey Heim is going to have a huge year, and he's going to be the guy that ends up being the champion. Okay, our final topic for this preview show. Daytona 500 is obviously a crown jewel race. There are 4 total listed crown jewel races. You have the Daytona 500, the Southern 500, the Coca-Cola 600, the Brickyard 400. I want to know what order do you put them in areas of prestige. And I also have put on the sheet the Bristol Night Race. And I don't know if that's something that it's gotten talk of being a crown jewel race without it ever being officially declared. And I don't know how you feel about that being a crown jewel.
Yeah, I think Dale Jr. tried pressing that as a crown jewel. I think because he won it one time. I don't know. I was still a cool race to win, I believe, but I don't know if I consider it a crown jewel. But
what's your order of the top 4 then?
I obviously have Daytona 500 as number 1.
Yeah, that's the obvious answer.
I put the Coca-Cola 600 number 2.
Uh-huh.
The Southern 500 3 and the Brickyard 100 4. Brickyard 400 number 4.
How do you feel about the Brickyard 400 as a whole? I mean, we've been away from it the last couple years on the road course, and now we're coming back to the oval for the first time in a while. Do you feel like that race still has the same level of prestige as the others?
I don't know if it. I don't know.
I can tell you this: there was a time that I felt like winning the Brickyard 400 was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I was like, "Man, Indianapolis, that's incredible."
Yeah. I still believe it's a big deal. I just don't see it as above the other ones.
Yeah. So you feel like all 4 are at least close.
Yeah.
Okay. My take on it is obviously Daytona 500 is number 1. Boy, I'm really close between the Southern 500 and the Coke 600.
I was torn between
the Coke 600 being that it's the longest. It's the marathon. It's the longest race that we run. I think that is a big deal.
I feel like it's bigger now that they only run at Charlotte Oval once a year.
Yeah,
because they run at the Roval in the fall.
It's Memorial Day weekend. That helps. Oh man. I also feel like Darlington's a more difficult track to win at.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think I'd put the Southern 500 second.
Yeah.
I think I'm putting it on the list second behind the Daytona 500, and then I'd say the Coca-Cola 600. So those, it's for me, it's the obvious Daytona 500. It's Coca-Cola 600 and the Southern 500 are close to each other for second.
That's pretty much where I'm at. I just kind of have them flip-flopped.
The Brickyard 400, I don't care about it anymore.
Oh, really?
No, I don't know why. It's just ever since probably the mid 2000s, I was just like, yeah, I'm over it. I don't. Stock cars at that racetrack, it's long, it's flat.
Watching the race itself just seems like it gets kind of boring.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know if it's the cars have changed over time, or
That must be it.
that's what it is, or
If you could swap out the Bristol Night Race for the Brickyard 400 as far as a crown jewel, I'd be in on that.
I can see that.
I want the Bristol Night Race to be considered a crown jewel. It's not just Dale Jr. propaganda, in my opinion. That's the one and only race that I've ever been to is the Bristol Night Race, and the atmosphere there is awesome. And I went to the one that Chris Buescher won, where everybody was blowing tires left and right, and I heard and read the comments about it after the race was over, and everybody hated that race, and I'm thinking, sitting here watching it in person, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So, having been there, I think that the Bristol Night Race is very much a crown jewel race, should be considered one. I absolutely look forward to that one every year on the schedule. And I would have to put it below the other three, but I would put it ahead of the Brickyard 400 if we were adding all five together.
Yeah. All
right, you got anything else that you want to talk about before we get to Daytona?
No.
I'm looking forward to the duels Thursday night. I want to see some cars on the racetrack and going fast. I do wish that we had more practice.
Yeah.
I would like to see more practice before this event, even if it was just an hour qualifying, duels, maybe another hour of practice, and then the race.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
They are doing practice after the duels,
Yeah.
I believe, and doesn't make sense to me, but
Yeah, I'd like to see them have some sort of on-track time before the duels themselves, before qualifying. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Duels Thursday night, Truck Friday night, Xfinity Saturday, and the Daytona 500 on Sunday. We'll be right back here in the garage area to recap that race for you. We'll see you then.